And now, what will unquestionably end up being this year's top contender for the title of best movie that the worst guy you know will agree with you is one of the actual best movies this year. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Well, did you really like The Boondock Saints when you were in college and then you watched it again recently and realized, man, I had terrible taste when I was in college? Well, nobody is good in exactly the way you want to remember that being. To put another way, screenwriter of John Wick, director of Hardcore Henry. Yeah, pretty much. The long and short of it is, it's a Death Wish alike, meaning it's a violent revenge and reclaimed masculinity movie centered on a societally tamed, upscale family man rediscovering his inner warrior protector when crime and chaos threaten his peaceful facade. Our Dadpool-to-be for this round is Bob Odenkirk, late of Mr. Show, Breaking Bad, and Better Call Saul, playing possibly the most quintessentially broken man emasculation archetype ever demanded by a version of this formula that wasn't an outright parody. A clipped, be-polo-shirted dork whose teenage son doesn't respect him, whose wife doesn't him anymore, who works for his own much more macho father-in-law in the persona of an ever more intimidating Michael Ironside, takes the bus while his asshole neighbor inherits a sick Dodge Challenger and always misses the garbage truck at the curb. He's not a fighter, he always looks down, what a schmuck, you get the idea. As the expected final indignity and inciting incident for the plot, during a home invasion break-in, he manages to get the drop on a pair of burglars and has an opportunity, maybe, probably, to actually kick their ass, but instead he does what we've all been told is the sensible and moral thing to do and manages to de-escalate the situation, allowing the criminals to exit and everyone else to be unharmed, which of course makes everyone else around him, especially his family and even the cops, very clearly think of him as an even bigger loser they can barely stand to be around without seething in silent disgust. As is also expected of the genre, this leads to his eventually snapping, tracking down the burglars and attempting to extract some payback, not being 100% satisfied by this because it turns out the realish world is complicated, and instead venting his pent-up rage during a chance encounter with some unambiguously rotten, genuine bad guys who have his vigilante justice coming and subsequently feels just terrific about himself, supercharged with renewed vigor, potency, and self-confidence. Except that the random villains he took it out on end up being connected to, say it with me now, a powerful and flamboyant Russian gangster with his own private army of elite killers, because that's the only subclass of bad guy left anymore that you don't have to ask an audience to empathize with in any way that doesn't come from, like, space. Who are now going to come kick his ass, and I guess we're gonna see what he's really made of after... Oh, but I should actually back up a bit. Because while nobody is absolutely using the outline and language of one of the most generic action subgenres possible with as few tweaks or flourishes as possible, it's doing so in the service of one single flippant inversion to the formula that more or less makes all the difference. Revealed pretty much right when he starts his revenge quest, and then spelled out in only the vaguest necessary terms, because, hence the title, Odenkirk's dumpy suburban boomer dad is not who he appears to be. In fact, as it so happens, he's a retired master assassin for the US military in the don't even bother asking which agency vein, specifically trained to utterly slaughter dozens of enemies at a time, all on his own. A brutally effective and really good at it one-man army who took his pension early and went cold turkey on violence in order to build a family life. Up until now. In other words, all his apparent weakling behavior, including letting the burglars go, has actually been his conscious decision not to step on the gas even a little for worry that he won't be able to turn it back off. And the tension of the second and third acts isn't about whether or not the bad guys will overwhelm him. They won't, they can't, they have no idea what they're actually dealing with or how badly he wants them to give him a reason, but the question of whether or not he'll put the genie back in the bottle, reconcile his past and future, or be unable to. The ensuing brawls, battles, and booby-trap shootouts with the escalating number of Russian baddies are mainly just providing the hero with the body count he needs to work through these questions and clear his head. Lest you think this is in any way high-minded or existential about these things, though, it's also an almost too cute by half way of letting us know up front that the stakes aren't going to get all that high and the brutality is meant to be enjoyed for its own sake as cinema in the abstract, even as it eschews the stylized, balletic invincibility repopularized by the John Wick films, in favor of realistic to a point, crunchy punch-outs and Western-style gunfights where most of the fighters happen to be really hard dudes who keep going even while taking an appropriate level of bruises, wounds, and broken bones. The fun kind of old-school nasty, and there's at least one never-seen-that-before creative kill that I really wish I'd gotten to see with an audience. Otherwise, it is exactly what it says on the label, and if you were looking for it to subvert its own famously problematic genre, you're looking in the wrong place. If there's anything specifically refreshing about Nobody in that context, it's that it's completely free of not only any instinct to apologize for itself, but also the reversal to make an obvious show of this poise as pretense to some kind of performative stand against an imagined opposite sensibility, some kind of anti-PC, anti-woke statement or whatever. It's completely comfortable in its own skin as a middle-aged guy wish fulfillment fantasy with the bass turned all the way up, where the fantasy part isn't simply an everyman getting over, but that the everyman isn't an everyman, but an exceptional badass who knows it and is really just putting up with everyone's bullshit for their sake because he knows he can just end them whenever he chooses, answering the factory default moral of every hero's journey narrative of the last 40 years or so, that the power was inside you all along, with a triumphantly sarcastic, yeah, I know, no shit. A movie where the frustrated guy on the bus who sits around going, I just wish someone would try something, is actually not bullshitting himself when he says that. And it's possible this kind of presentation would be as insufferable as that sounds to anyone outside the specific audience that would like even the less good version of it, without the just enough direction from Ilya Naishaller, who proves himself more than just a one-trick action stylist with a complete divergence from hardcore Henry's video game-inspired kinetic postmodernism into old-school nuts-and-bolts action for the fun stuff, but also shows a subtle hand for the quieter drama, of which there's more than you might expect, and further kudos to whoever in the production recognized the absolute appropriateness of scoring some of the most indulgent boys-in-their-toys spectacle moments to iconic man-feels ballads like The Impossible Dream. But it's Bob Odenkirk that holds the entire presentation together, though, in a film mostly free of gimmickry apart from its oh-by-the-way special set of skills backstory, the omnipresent spectacle of one of modern pop culture's great naturally weathered sad sack effortlessly snapping between broken man and breaking men, while also looking absolutely convincing as a killer elite, as opposed to just giving him cartoon super strength or extreme martial arts skills and turning things into a total farce. It's a real marvel of character work, and it elevates what's otherwise aiming for Father's Day Steelbook Blu-ray Walmart perennial, and make no mistake, if any of this sounds even a little bit good to you, Father's Day came early this year, into something that suggests, if he wanted it, that Odenkirk could make a real go at the genre as our first true successor to Die Hard era Bruce Willis in over 30 years. As it stands now, yeah, that's an 8 out of 10 for a damn good little blast of a movie that's the everyman action flick you've been waiting for.